Today I will tell you about the molecular identification of the most of the different species of the pests. Recently, the molecular data-based identification are being used along with the morphological identification of the thrips, which mostly helps to overcome the constraints of morphological identification by the minute size of insects. The severity of the characters, adult and greater resemblance of nymphal stages of different thrips species. Mostly these are being used along with the mostly identification of the thrips, which helps to overcome the and also helps to overcome the constraints of the identification by minute size of the insects and also other characters. Mostly these species molecular approaches for the species identification and physiological relationships of the insects. Mostly the molecular approaches for the species identification and phylogenetic relationship of insects are increasingly being common. DNA polymerase in mitochondrial and nuclear genes have been used for insects molecular and systematic, and these used I2S2 region to discriminate between externally indigestible helicase, and these are found in this molecular tools fast and reliable for species identification. These genes to make the physiological and also increase the molecular based common, which are mostly in the insects pest, mostly which are found in the thrips. This provided a list of thrips vector species with their common names such as key diagnostic characters, distribution, and important host of the crop plants along with the disease symptoms and the various crops. These vector species do not encompass a single evolutionary lineage, so possibly other species of thrips have lost the ability to transmit viruses, or attainment of vector ability has occurred the independently in several thrips species. At given the location of the vector competency of T. tabaci also depends on the thrips, and these are the various populations that are present at that location. Mostly they increase their population gradually in early seasons and multiply the rapidly, because of which they are not feasible to control easily. Thrips are the majorly threat for the crops, and various species of thrips has been reported to develop the resistance to different crops of the insecticides, and also these insecticides resistance has continued to be widespread problem with the thrips, as populations have continued to evolve resistance to all manner of new insecticides. Mostly they provide a list of the thrips vector species with their common names, keys, diagnostic characters, distribution, and important host crop plant along with the disease symptoms on the different crops. These vector species do not encompass a single evolutionary lineage, so possibly other species of thrips have lost to ability to transmit viruses, or attainment of vector ability has occurred independently in several thrips species at any given time. Location: the vector competency also depends on the thrips and versus population that are present at that location. The members of these species, also known as the thrips are bladder-footed or fring-winged insects. They are minute and cylinder-bodied, ranging from 0.5 to 14 millimeter in their length. They are commonly in tropics, and around about the 700 species have been recorded from all over the world. Mostly large species are tropical, the common temperate and the common in small in size. Some are large in size. They have minute in their size and they are sucking type of the insect. Recently, their molecular database identification are being used along with the morphological identification of thrips, which helps to overcome the constraints of morphological identification by the minute size of the insect, scarcity of characteristics, and molecular approaches for the species identification and the phylogenetic relationship of insect are increasingly become the common. These are reliable for species identification, use nuclear and mitochondrial genes to make the phylogenetic analysis of the thrips. It found varying degrees of to make the phylogenetic discrimination of thrips species while they compared five different loci and among them mitochondrial cytochrome oxidase COI provides sufficient variation to be used for the future DNA barcoding studies of the thrips, which are mostly in the DNA broadcasting, has been effectively used for the species identification of thrips from the Korean Sinimula. It provided a list of different species, which vector species with their common names and the other characters. These vector species do not relate a single variety but also lineage, as possibly other species of thrips have lost the ability to transmit viruses or attainment of vector ability has occurred independently in several thrips species. Mostly the recently molecular database identification used along with the different identification of the thrips, which helps to overcome the different problems and constraints of the physical and also the internal identification of small size and their security and their characters, adult and greater resemblance of nymphal stages of different thrips species. Molecular approaches of the species identification and their population gradually in early season and multiply rapidly, because of which they are not feasible to control the easily. Thrips are the majorly treat for the crops, and various species of the thrips has been reported to develop resistance to different crop of insecticides. Insecticide resistance has continued to be widespread problem with the thrips as population have continued to evolve resistance to all manner of new insecticides, and their body parts also have the different parts. They have the bladder type, footed or the frame winged insects. Their minute and slender bodies ranging from 1 m to 15 mm in length. They are more commonly in tropics, and around about the 7,000 species have been recorded from all over the world. Most large species in tropical and common in the temperate region, mostly found in the cool region, mostly found in the but common found in the warm region. Mostly these thrips affect the cotton crops. They suck the they suck the material from the leaves and also affect the crops, which increase the wilting point of the crops, which also decrease the quality of the crop and also decrease the yield of the mostly yield of the they decrease the yield of the cotton crop.